Hello, everybody. Glad you're here. Get your spirit on.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Spiritual Living of Greater Milwaukee, where we teach universal spiritual principles and tools for better living. We welcome you here. We are a spiritual community that values connection, consciousness, and each other very, very much. We have a special Sunday for you this morning with Dr. Martha Creek, a longtime friend and companion on the spiritual journey.
So now please join me in our declaration of principles. I believe there is one creative intelligence operating throughout the universe and operating throughout my entire being now and always. I believe this perfect spirit operates upon a law of mind, and it creates my experience according to my beliefs. This law responds automatically to the tendency and consistency of my thoughts and actions. I believe this perfect creative intelligence can be used by me and by every other person to produce health, abundance, and love in my mind, body, and total life experience. I use it now and I rejoice in it, and so it is. So now please join me in our Namaste greeting, where we recognize that I am presence that Dorothy treated about. Namaste is a Sanskrit word that means the I am within me. I recognize that, and I recognize it in the so-called other. So let's electronically give each other the Namaste greeting by bringing our hands in prayer fashion from forehead to heart, making that recognition and saying Namaste. Namaste. Thank you.
Today is a special day in our community. For one, we're all together. And at some point this morning, I want to invite you to look. We have 2 full pages of people. So I want to invite you to, in your heart, to create a silent blessing for each person, each name you see, and then connect with them in mind, because this is a way we can stay connected in the unified field. Today is a great day because Martha Creek, our great friend, is here with us. And I don't even know where in the world Martha is today. So that's the first thing, one of the first things she can tell us. I want you to know I've known Martha at least 15 years. I didn't know who she was. I heard she did interesting work. She was recommended to me by the Mennonite Peace Group. I don't even know if you know that, Martha, in Chicago. And I invited her to speak at an INTA meeting, and she just rocked my world. I was fairly new I was brand new in Milwaukee. I had just moved here and got involved with INTA. And Martha, we've been connected ever since. She has most recently served on the board of directors of Affiliated New Thought Network, which is our umbrella organization. Her personal mission is to support those who serve, and that's all of us. All of us are serving life. And Martha, what I know is she's always active, expanding her own consciousness. She has a doctorate from Emerson Theological Institute. She doesn't cotton much to titles, but she is Reverend Dr. Martha Creek, a unity minister, a religious science minister, a divine science minister, and certainly a citizen of the global community. So Martha, thank you for being here. And can we unmute Martha, my darling Andrea?
I'm ready to go. I'm unmuted. It's hard to keep me muted.
Good. Excellent. So I have, I was going to ask you 4 questions, but that's just too much. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What makes you belly laugh?
What makes me belly laugh is just now hearing you say somebody else muted me. That
Oh, okay.
it made me belly laugh when I saw the other people laughing at my little joke. That made me belly laugh. It also
Okay.
makes me belly laugh when my 4-year-old great niece throws her head back and laughs
Oh.
for no apparent reason. And it reminds me to lighten my own heart and to access a part of my brain that is light years above seriousness to playfulness.
Thank you, Martha. One of the great things I've learned from you, and I asked myself this question. In fact, this week I noticed my uptight quotient was pretty high. Martha said to me one day when I was getting ready for a workshop and making sure there were tablecloths on the table and the right number of forks and the floor was vacuumed and driving myself essentially insane, Martha said, honey, you're not laughing, you're not having any fun, you're just too serious. And I notice when I'm serious, it's a litmus test for stress. And I thank you for that so deeply and sincerely. It's been so useful in my life. And my next question for you, Martha, is how has adversity been a blessing in your life?
Well, many, many ways, honey. I mean, that we would have to talk the rest.
Well, I know that's an unfair question, really.
But since a child, even, I could look around as a little kid and see this arguing and fighting and other things. And some part of my consciousness could observe that and see even in that's an option. But my mind was open enough, even as a little kid, to see there's another option here. There is another option here. So that adversity was a portal for me to go, this is one way to be, this is one way to do it, to fight, to argue, to get more rigid, to get belittling, nitpicky, or to say, wait a minute, there's a lot of stress that goes with that. So I'm going to look for another way to do that. I also was in a school, a little old rural school. Some of you asked before we got on the live here about Bug Tussle, Kentucky. That's where I was born and raised. It's on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky, right in the middle of the state. The nearest thing people know about Bug Tussle is there's a Corvette museum in Bowling Green. And it's between Louisville, Kentucky and Nashville, Tennessee. And if you Google it, you can go Google it right now while we're on here and find Bug Tussle, Kentucky on the map. And that's where I was born and raised. And there was a lot in that little old school I was in. There was only one at that time, when I was early in school, my early years, there was only one African-American family in that school. And I didn't see any difference in them. I loved them very, very much. And I could not comprehend as a child the difference people saw. So I'm very glad about that. So that adversity that other people are working through and having to work through now, and I still have plenty to do in that area. I had something in me, in my bones and blood, that didn't have to sort through all of that like other people did. So I've had adversity, certainly, but I've not had the crosses to bear that other people have. I can tell you that. And I had a cancer diagnosis once that people see as adversity. And I could not be anything but grateful for that. When I looked at what people had, the diseases in the world, all the disease in the world and the diagnosis and the challenges in that, and saw that every human being has a diagnosis of some sort. And if you haven't had yours yet, don't worry, your turn will come. We can just be with that diagnosis differently, which was a huge breakthrough for me. It wasn't about disease prevention. And certainly if you can prevent them, go ahead, knock yourself out, and then can it and sell it. And in the meantime, when you can't prevent disease, we have a way of being with disease that's very different, that says, I may not can change what I got, but I can change how I'm going to be with what I've got. And that's certainly what I did in that case. And I went in to have mastectomy wearing a button on my hospital gown that said, "Stop staring at my breast." So that got people laughing in the OR, and doctors and nurses lightened up a little bit. So there was a different energy in the room and in the field there. And it wasn't a false positivity, for lack of a better way of saying it. It was coming from absolutely what I'm going to do in this matter is, how I'm going to be with this matter is this way. And it's a fine if other people don't see it as humorous or funny or positive, but it's my role in the world, and it's what I want to create in the world, and it's what I want to be about. So then it becomes my assignment or my job, so to speak, to bring that kind of creation to any kind of experience that I can. And then we've got all sorts of adversity, like when we're on an important deadline for our important schedule and traffic is blocked. What are we to do? So there's no shortage of these little pop quizzes of adversity. And then some, particularly right now in 2020, that's not been pop quizzes. We're in a master class of adversity and how we're going to be with adversity, and no shortage of opportunity and invitation from creation to say, all the practice you've claimed to have and all the expanding consciousness we've tried to achieve and claimed to achieve. And it's like we're in a master class now of being with adversity differently, and that everything that we've done and studied and read and taught and embodied and prayed and sung, now's the time to see that that's got to be dialed up. So regardless of how long we've been a student, or how many books we've read, or how many times we've been through 365, or how many times we've slept under Ernest Holmes' bed, or the Fillmores or anybody else, now's the time to say, I don't know anything about adversity yet. That I'm still approaching adversity with, I'm a student to this. And whatever I've done in the past was for the past. And what I'm going to do today in the face of adversity is still to be determined. And it's going to take a heightened level of practice for me, and a heightened level of consciousness, because we've not seen anything like this. And I firmly, sincerely and firmly, genuinely believe that we're equipped for it, that we're here at this time and in this way on an assignment, that we're here to be this change and to recreate around adversities at all levels, at all depths.
Oh, thank you, Martha, so very much. And I want to invite, can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I want to take this opportunity to invite everyone to open up to the talk Martha has for us, to the teaching, because it will reach you at many levels, and to encourage you to be fully present and to get to know this friend who joins us physically. Over many years, we've known each other 15, maybe Martha's been to Milwaukee 12 or 13 times now. So over the years, our community studies healthy congregations, which really has evolved into simply knowing ourselves better in many ways. So Martha, thank you for doing our talk this morning, and you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. And I sincerely thank you, Lisa, because you've been an epitome of an enlightened leader since I met you. The fact that you're still learning, and that you're enrolled and you're involved, and you're hosting INTA events and inviting speakers and taking counsel from Lombard Mennonite Peace Centers and serving on your own board and leading this congregation, and the divine audacity to found a ministry, so we can all just pause here a minute and bow to you, and the uncommon stamina that you have, and the uncommon motivation through challenge and growth and expansion and letting go and dying off and beginning again. It's been something to witness, honey, and still is. What is uncommonly motivating you, and it's an absolute privilege and a blessing for me to serve with you and to serve
Mm.
this ministry here. And
Thank
all
you.
of you. I love you. I love you greatly. And I love this ministry and what it's about. And the idea that I pull today is one of, as we talk about consciousness, expanding consciousness, and even, even though I don't love it, it's often referred to as like a ladder of consciousness, increasing our consciousness and that. So I'll use that term today just for matters of conveying a message here. And I love us to this morning awaken to the difference between this driven, instinctual, more knee-jerk force. This force, when we try to force our way, when we try to force an idea, when we attempt to force someone to see it the way we see it, and how impotent that really is. How non-sustainable that really is. And even though we may get results from it, even though if we threaten enough and are willful enough and stubborn enough and demanding enough, we may get some results, but they're not sustainable. So force will absolutely, and has been proven over and over since the creation of time, scientifically, culturally, historically, has proven that force will not work, that it is not sustainable, that it is not causative, generative, creative, innovative, and that we then, as leaders here, all of us, every one of us on this call, as a leader of this, to continue to wake up to see, where is that still got a hold of me? Where am I approaching something with an attitude of force, an idea of force, which could get me some results? And if we tell the truth, and we all need to tell the truth here and there, we can get a great deal of satisfaction out of it sometimes, like we really accomplished something. And it's simply not sustainable, ultimately. So then the difference of shifting out of that mindset of force and that instinctual, knee-jerk, more archaic, animalistic, dominant arena of the brain, which is pea-sized, by the way, into the higher parts of the brain to operate from a place of power. So think about any leader in history that you've ever known of, and the difference of what they achieved coming from power versus force. From an approach, from a power, a place of power that was substantial, sustainable, catapulting even. It catapulted us forward. And it also brings then what we refer to in New Thought usually then as a positive external impact, real creation, innovation, collaboration, a very, very different energy, a very different way of being in the world, and a very different way of being with loss, with change, with grief. And identifying then, even if we look at consciousness from just these two levels, and it's not that simple, and it's not like a binary thing, we're in and out of this. We're in power and then in force, and then in power and then in force, and back in power, back in. So this movement back and forth that we're practicing and practicing and practicing with intent and with presence, to operate more and more from power, and to take back whatever power we've leaked off, to take back whatever power we've misused, or whatever power that we can see may have gotten us some result, but our hearts are heavy from it, or we're stressed, or as Dr. Lisa said, I'm in a mighty uptight frame of mind here. And seriousness is in itself is a symptom of anxiety. So the second you catch yourself serious, you'll know that the anxiety has come up. And of course, the higher anxiety goes, what happens to functioning? And the higher anxiety goes, what happens to thinking and collaborating? So it's like we've got to keep this anxiety pull back a little and more on an even plane to have the access to the brain and the higher levels of consciousness that we pray about, read about, and actually endeavor for, to operate more from that higher mind, the upper room, whatever you want to call it. And it's no little thing, because we're wired. We're wired. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle as I drove yesterday talk about watching a cat, a domesticated cat, the friendliest cat in the world, got a hold of a bird and took the bird down, and how the owners were so appalled at what a demon that cat was, when they were pretty sure that was the sweetest cat on the planet. So this is what we're talking about, that instinct that had nothing against the bird. It had never met the bird. There was no fight. There was no fence built between their houses or anything that caused this. It's just, you're a bird, I'm a cat, and I'm wired to take you down. So one of us is going down. It's going to be you, the smaller one here. So we're just a hair above an animal, folks. So let's not get too big for our britches, as Mama would say, about how quickly we can also go into this knee-jerk reaction like this animalistic dominance kind of force field. And to begin to think then, okay, in any situation, to take enough pause to say, which arena am I operating in here? And to catch it energetically. You study energy, you know energy, you can observe the energy in your body. You know when it's tense and constricted and jacked up, something's going on here. So then before we act, as simple as this sounds, before I fire off that email, before I answer the phone, before I give somebody the patriotic way for cutting me off, even before I do any of that, what if we simply said, I've got to stop, I've got to put a pause in here and make sure that I'm coming from a place of power, not a place of force. I want to put in place here the absolute intent, my prayer, my treatment, that I'm aligned with wholeness, that I'm aligned with creation itself, and what I'm about to say and do, the action, the word, and even if I'm saying, oh, it's all fine, I'm not conveying that energy. So I can say, oh, it's just fine all day long. Or, us new thoughters traipse around and say, oh, it's all good. And I say, well, tell your face, because it has not caught up to the affirmation yet. So just pause and say, what am I going to cause? What am I in this situation, in this very situation where, I'm just a hair away from kicking her in the shin, or I'm just a hair away from gossiping about her, which us spiritual types do instead. We don't hit very much. It's so animalistic, but boy, we'll gossip till the cows come home. To say, okay, before I do any of that, I'm going to pause and remember that I'm creating something here. I'm causing something here. The use of my word, the tone of my word, the energy of my word, my motivation here is causative. The idea I'm holding, the action I'm seeking is causative, generative motion, energy and motion. So before I say anything or do anything or take action or react instinctively, to at least put a pause in, presence myself, and remember what is true about me, what is true about law, what is true about causative, generative, creative law, and then proceed from there. And it sounds so simple to do it. It'll be no little thing for me to take one pause today. It will be no little thing for you, any one of us, the 50, 60 people, 100,000 listening here, whoever, wherever this goes out into the world to serve. If one of us takes a different action today by elevating our consciousness and putting enough brakes on and enough pause on that we don't act like an animal, we've changed the whole world. The whole of humanity has been changed, affected, uplifted, advanced, evolved, progressed because of every single time I pause today and you pause today to say, let me get myself righted here. Let me get conscious here. And let me pause here and choose when I can. If there's free will, and I don't know what you believe about that, but if you believe it, that there's times that we can choose how I'm going to respond to this and how I'm going to respond in this situation here. And it's the greatest thing. It's the biggest contribution I believe I can make to this, my own soul's progression and to the progression of the soul of humanity. So it's a full-time job. And as much as we want to go out maybe and change the world, you know, it was some big external something. It's like, well, go on and do that. Any of you who can, go out and change it externally. And if you believe our teachings, we can change it externally by changing it internally. And by practicing. And then through that practice and that application of that and that embodiment of that, then we make real process. We make real progress. So practice makes progress. Practice makes progress. And I absolutely believe it's our calling. I absolutely believe it is fulfilled already. I believe it's absolutely done. And I believe that we're the ones. And I absolutely know that some of us, this has been like a pressure cooker this year. Have you noticed? You feeling some pressure, this pressure cooker and this intensity that's up, the heat is up like never before in any of our lives. And then these other things that are anxiety provoking, not to mention this pressure cooker that we're in with this intensity, the rapid change, the rapid loss, this catapult, the fact that we had a question mark about how long this is going to go on. And now the question mark is taller and taller. So instead of the question mark getting shorter and more manageable, the question mark's getting taller and taller about what it's all about and when and what we're going to take. And it was, oh, we'll get through Easter. Then it's, oh, we'll get through Mother's Day. And then now it's like, now what? Now what? So we've got to do everything we can as leaders to keep our anxiety regulated. Because the more anxious we get, the more anxiety in the field, then the more trouble, the more reactivity, the more instinctual. So it's no little thing for any of us to do prayer and to do treatment and to do meditations and to keep ourselves grounded, spiritually connected, and at one, more in atonement than anything. I believe it could be the greatest contribution that we make. We're also in a time, and I wrote about that this month. And if you want that newsletter, you can go over to marthacreek.com and just sign up. It's a free newsletter every month. And also anywhere that I'm doing classes is always posted there. And this topic was on isolation. And I remember, and Lisa, that's another answer to your question. Like when I started hearing people say, oh, we're not isolating, we're socially distancing. I'm like, quit calling it social distancing. It is isolation. It is isolation. Now, we don't like that. It's like, oh, don't call it isolation. It's isolation. We have been in isolation. Some of us have been in isolation. And isolation is anxiety provoking because we're wired for connection. We're wired for community, for tribe, for family, and that. So not to call it isolation doesn't mean it's not isolation. Now that's driving anxiety up, and you can read all about it scientifically, what's happened in people with their depressions and domestic violence and abuse and addictions and things like that, that are the symptoms of this isolating behavior and the requirements of isolation that we've been under here too. So it's no little thing to keep regulating ourselves to feel more, find very specific, meaningful ways, purposeful ways, powerful ways to be in connection with our soul, certainly our spirit, our self, through whatever practice works for you. Keep it up and turn it up 10 degrees. Whatever works, turn it up 10 degrees and Godspeed. And then to find a way to stay meaningfully connected with others that matter to us, and with things that matter to us, and things that we value, and that we absolutely can, will, and do operate at a higher level of consciousness. It's not just theory. True potentiality, true spiritual enlightenment, emotional enlightenment, emotional maturity, spiritual maturity that causes and holds a much higher energy, a much higher potentiality than that regressive, instinctual energy field. And I pull this quote, and it's from David Hawkins, who wrote a lot about this and expanding consciousness and levels of consciousness. And he said, "It is well to remember that they are rarely manifested as pure states in an individual." Levels of consciousness. Remember, they're rarely manifested as pure states in any individual. People may operate on one level in a given area of life and operate at a very different level in another area of their life. So you may have 5 of your 6 areas all honed, sewed up, buttoned down. Good for you. You may ascend this afternoon. We'll want to film it for sure. And whatever area we've not gotten quite that solid in, let's work there. Let's commit together today to remember who we are and what our assignment is here. Let's remember our why for being in physical form, our potential, living divinity as humanity, living divinity as humanity, the potential that that holds. And then to activate, to choose, and to choose and choose and choose again, to remember that this state of consciousness is something to work, is something to work for, is something to work toward, and that it may be different for everybody. So be it. And whatever is true for you, whatever is powerful for you, causative, generative, purposeful for you, do that. Do that. And know that then God, life, creator, is impulsing everybody else independently. So we don't have to be, I don't have to be so concerned with what they're doing or how they're doing it. Just how am I doing it today? How am I going to do it today? How will I do this today to reach a higher state of consciousness and to practice living from that higher state of consciousness, and to accept for me that there'll be moments of regression. There'll be moments and there'll be situations where I will regress to, quote, a lower level, depending on how much stress I'm in or anxiety. And even from that place to say, oh, there's another option. Oh, there's another way to be with this. Oh, let me come at this from more of a place of power. And I thank you for what you do in the world. I thank you for who you are in the world. And I thank you for your calling and for your certainty in this moment now that you're perfectly equipped for that calling and for its fulfillment. All I know for sure is we won't do it alone. There'll be parts we have to do alone, but we don't do it alone. You can't do it wrong. You can't do it wrong. And it's going to take longer than we like. If I can ever serve you in any way whatsoever, get me word. It is my joy, my blessing, my privilege, and my fulfillment of my own calling, as Dr. Lisa said, to serve those who serve.
Martha, what a beautiful, powerful message. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, one of the magnificent things that has happened since we've been in this isolation, quarantine, safer at home period, even though we're coming out of that now, we're still finding our way as a community. Martha, to be connected with you this intimately on Zoom and Facebook, that's a marvel of technology. So thank you, and what a great thing. Thank you for that. And I want to encourage everyone just to go right now to your gallery view, and there are 2 pages, and consciously send love to each other. It's a potent practice we can have. Just look at each other. It's so great to see you. So wonderful. Good morning. Good morning. I love you all. Thank you for being here. Martha, what a great message. Hi, Helene. Hi, it's great to see you. Elise, amazing. Alan, Doreen, hi. Lars, I love you. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. John and Tom, great to see you. So great. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Faye. Martha, do you have a few minutes? Should we open up to question and answers from our community for a few minutes?
Of course, I'd love that. I'd love to hear your next 2 questions you had for me too. I can't bear not knowing what the last 2 questions.
You can't bear it? Oh my, they're not that fabulous. So here's what you do. If you want to ask Martha a question or give her some love or make a comment on her amazing talk or whatever is on your heart, be sure to raise your hand. And this is a surprise for our director, Andrea, but she's on it. If you know how to raise your hand, you go down to participants. Is that right, Andrea?
That's correct.
And then raise your hand. It's a little blue symbol. And then Martha, well, Andrea will call on you. So Martha, the next 2 questions, let's see. One of them was, what relaxes you?
Actually, I couldn't do what I do without living relaxed. So this relaxes me. I'm calm as anything. I was here having a lovely breakfast in the home of dear friends here. I just got to Louisville, Kentucky last night.
Great.
I've not been here in 6 months. And he said, do you need some time to prepare? I
know. Yeah.
I did prepare something. I normally do, and I'm very open to this. I also love solitude and silence. So this 6 weeks I had of sequestering between March and then the end of May up until May 23rd. I was alone and silent other than coursework and classwork a majority of that time for 6 weeks. And it was elixir. So solitude and silence does it too. And participating does it sometimes.
Thank you. Elixir. That's wonderful. I love the silence and quiet, and I love people. So it's all the fullness of life. Thank you for that response. And my last question is a favorite question, and that is, and I know it changes, but what is your daily spiritual practice?
Silence and solitude. I've meditated for years, and I'm trained in transcendental meditation and Vipassana meditation. So if you haven't checked that out yet, it's extended silence, 10 days of noble silence, not even looking people in the eye or reading or no distractions basically, but deep inner work. So I still use that, particularly at times like this. I also do some kind of daily reading. Something that'll provoke me and prompt me to pause, to look. I'm also writing coursework, and I'm really alive in that since the travel has ceased, generally ceased. I've written curriculum for boundaries classes, critical conversation skills, beatitudes, and that keeps me close to the work. And it keeps me in my own practices of applying it, not just espousing it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martha. If you'd like to ask our beloved friend Martha a question, raise your hand.
We have one question from John. I will unmute him. John,
Actually, it's a question from Tom. We share we share the website. Good to see you, Martha. You know, you mentioned something that's always caused a bit of confusion for me, and I just am looking for some clarity. When you said one thing we're very good at all the time is saying it's all good, but I didn't make the connection in what do I need to follow up that with? So for example, if I look at what we're doing with the environment and reduction of species, you know, when I see things like that, I say to myself, maybe it's all good, however. So where do I go with that?
Well, you know, that's up to you, honey. I can tell you, I don't have an answer for you, but I have an answer for me. And that is, it's not all good.
Right, right.
That is some kind of spiritual bypassing to me. And it's based on a very linear binary 3-year-old system of filing things, which is good and bad, you know, right and wrong. And that's the system that I work consistently at dismantling, so that it's good and bad. It's inhale and exhale. It's alpha and omega, not one or the other, but it's all of that. So if I look at what's going on in the world and species in environment, in your example, honey, and say that it's all good, then I'm not likely to take some action toward that. So it's a real disconnect for me to look upon something and say, oh, it's all good, when I've not embodied that. So my next step of action then is to embody that.
Okay.
And I say in the higher realms, it may be all good. I don't know. But back here at the ranch, there's some work to be done here. So.
I understand that. And I tend to view it in terms of, it helps me when I think, okay, for me to have evolution and expansion, I have to look at things realistically and say something needs to change here. You know, so thanks for your comments.
Right. Well, and your consciousness about it. It's like, I don't have to say it's not good. I can just say, I see a higher potential here.
Right.
Yeah.
I see another possibility here, which was how we opened the conversation today. Regardless of if something's working, there's still a higher potential for it.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Martha, are you starting up going to churches now? Are you, or is that still restricted because of crowd size, or?
Yeah, it's many facets of it, honey. Most of the churches that I serve are not meeting in person yet, and it's not determined when they're going to. And then I was booked to only be there one time each year in each of those places too. So all of that has kind of been turned up down like a apple cart turned over. So in addition to the churches not being open, there's that factor. When they reopen, it's limited how many people they can serve and how they're going to serve. So there's a plenty of wrinkles yet to work out about that. INTA conference canceled, Anton conference canceled, Chautauqua canceled, these places where I would go and be serving. And then the work that I was going to be doing in those areas was around those conferences. So I basically canceled, either it canceled or I canceled my travel, including my personal vacation travel for October. I've also canceled that. So for the first time in 16 years, I'm looking to lease a place of my own. So I haven't had a place or anything in my name in 16 years.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm looking to do that now for 6 months.
Okay. I was going to ask you, I know you've given plenty of courses online and things. Would you say there's like a limit to how long you can hold people's attention when you're giving a course, or do you have like a 10-minute break? Or
I think there are limits. You know, there's a lot written about this, Sue, particularly from TED Talks. You know, they recommend that we don't have adults don't have an attention span more than 10 or 20 minutes. 20 minutes if we're interested in a topic, 10 minutes if we're partially interested. Otherwise, it's about a minute, I'd say. And I don't have any trouble with it. You know, I do intensives where we're together from Wednesday to Sunday, and people hang in there. They come to every single session. They're in the room, they're in the chair. So we're doing some deep inner work when we're together like that. And I'm doing those gatherings now virtually. So it's the first time I'll be doing it. And I'm doing them in 2-hour segments with an hour break. And we're going for several days. And I've been doing online classes for 8 years before this, you know, through those immersion processes and extraordinary leadership groups that I do. I've been using Zoom all that time, and we go an hour, but it passes just like that. I mean, it is so quick and over. And I tried an hour and a half, and 2 hours in the classes I've been doing during April and May. And my preference for it is an hour and a half. But we went 2 hours for a whole month in a certain class, and I didn't have any drop-off rate or anything like that. So I don't know how engaged they are, because I was really presenting. It wasn't as much of a back and forth and a question and answer as it was me presenting with some interaction. So I don't really know, honey, but it varies based on where we are.
Maybe what you're teaching.
And what our state of mind is, honey. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
Does anyone else have a question? This is a great opportunity, up close and personal with Martha Creek.
Well, and I'm accessible. Somebody said that to me this year, and I kind of got triggered by it. They said, "You're finally accessible again." I'm like, "What do you mean accessible? My God, my email's private, my phone number's, public, my email, phone number is all public. I'm as accessible as I can be." But you know, it wasn't true, because I'm in these places. And if I'm not in your place, and then these groups, once I start them in January, they're open and then they're closed once people get enrolled. And I've got 4 groups that meet every month, and they're open at some point, but then they're closed groups. So it was true. I had lost accessibility that I never intended to, from all this travel and being, you know, somewhere specific. But this Zoom and this technology world has opened that up. So I had friends on here from Florida, Michigan, Ohio.
Yes.
Day. And there's Adrian waving hi, honey. We've got a global world here now where the teaching is available, and that's been my vision. I speak my mission, my ministry, as to serve those who serve. And my vision is to get our teachings to the whole of the planet.
Yeah. Yes.
Our teachings, the teachings that mean the world to us, the teachings that have made differences in our life and have given us a tool and a potential to create an experience that we can feel right about and good about and excited about and challenged by, even to get these teachings to the whole of the world. So this stay put, which was my internal guidance when this happened. It wasn't just what was happening in the world, but the clearest guidance I've ever had to stay put. It's caused me to have a a different reach. So here I am with you without flying on a plane to Milwaukee.
Yes. Thank you so much, Martha. I'll ask going once. Oh, is that your hand up, Terry?
I am unmuted. First of all, so grateful for the message today. So grateful for you, Dr. Martha. It's awesome. And I had a question, since you are well studied in science of mind, divine science, and unity. Could you name a divine science author that you resonate with, someone from that tradition, possibly from unity?
I didn't read that much about divine science other than from the founders, Nona Brooks and those women that started.
Okay.
So when I got over into that area of divine science, I didn't really go any further than that. And I read divine science to see what the variances were, not to point out variances, but I've never been able to find that many, even with
Me either.
I started
aren't.
religious science and then went to a Sillamar every year and all that, and then got over on a unity track, and they call prayer treatment prayer, and there was more Christianity slant in unity. I could see more scientific slant in religious science, but the basis of it was really the same to me. Lisa would have some recommendations. I'd say, honey, she's far more read about it likely than I am or have been. But I've enjoyed it. And the reason I'm ordained in all those ways is because I study. It wasn't to get an ordination ever, ever. I believe I was ordained when I was 3 years old. So it wasn't to seek an ordination. It was to learn and to think and to use the law and to practice. And I even tease about it. Like, if you study enough, you'll get some letters behind your name. or in front of your name. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions?
Well, it might be a good time to, Dawn, if you have a question, go ahead. Don't be shy.
Hey, Martha.
Hi.
Thanks again. So the question is this: what would you love in this place you are going to lease? Because you're headed into a new chapter and we can resonate and hold that with you.
Thank you, honey. I would love a view of water. And I love it to be in driving distance. That means less than an hour to this 4-year-old great niece of mine, where my family will bring her there for visits without me doing all the driving. I'd also love, if it's whatever building it's in, if there's other people in that building, that they're extremely into silence and quiet living. And I can tell you my mind's open enough. If that's not the case, it won't be mine. So see that with me. Solitude, silence, easy, even energy, water view, great, just ease and grace. And that it's home, that there's a feeling of that I'm staying put, that it's a feeling of sanctuary.
We see that for you, and that was a tremendous example of clarity with open.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you also, honey, even for the wholeheartedness of you that would do that with me and for me.
Thank you, Dawn. Tom, is your hand up? Okay, go ahead. Andrea must unmute you, and then this will be our
Okay.
last question and we'll close.
Okay, very good.
Mr.
Thank
Question.
Some of you are aware that John and I run a weekly discussion group, and we use some things from Abraham as a stimulus. And our question this week, it begins here. What are the 3 most important things for you? What are the 3 most important things for you?
That's a good question.
It's a question for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clarity, presence, possibility.
Thank you. Love it. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I get asked things like that often, and people are shocked that it's not friends and family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I still was present today to see like, what's the true answer instead of making up an answer like what.
I
And
appreciate it.
I love you all. I love friends, but there's nothing more important to me than the clarity of my own mind. MarthaCreek.com if I can support you. Blessings.